Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Erin with Me Biosciences, and today I'm joined by Jeremy Kaufman. If you want to start off by giving just a little bit bio and your background.
So, as Erin said, my name is Jeremy Kaufman. I'm 25 years old, currently living in Portland, Oregon, but I was born and raised on the East Coast. I began obstacle course racing about 5, maybe 6 years ago now. I think this will be my sixth season, if there is a season this year.
Hopefully.
But I grew up playing soccer, a lot of midfield positions, so a lot of running back and forth on the field. And I feel like that's kind of transitioned well into the different distances that you see in obstacle course racing.
Nice. And so how did you get into it? Was there someone that kind of turned you onto it, or did you find it by yourself?
Yeah, so I have 5 siblings, 4 of them being older. The oldest 2 are twins, and they're about 10 years older than me. In 2015, we ran a Spartan sprint together. And then from there, it kind of became every race that we could find. Warrior Dash, Terrain Race, Rugged Maniac, Savage Race, local OCRs, anything that we could find. And it even went from the sprint distance all the way up to the longest one I've done being 34 miles over 60 obstacles and taking about 11 and a half hours to complete.
Wow. That's intense. And when was that one?
That one specifically was in 2018. It was actually in Kimberley, which is in British Columbia, Canada.
Oh, wow. And
That's
so go ahead.
The nice thing about the sport is that it takes you to different places.
Yeah. I mean, being able to travel is I think a beauty of sport, and be able to meet people like you're talking about. I know you have a little bit of an Instagram following and some training. If you want to touch on kind of what you do for social media and how that has helped you.
So yeah, Captain Kaufman on Instagram, and as I started going through the races, I developed in the first year, it was a lot of open heat races, just figuring out what the sport was and how it worked, and quickly realized that I couldn't stand the bottlenecks at obstacles that were involved in open heat races. And competitive side of myself, I quickly jumped to elite racing in 2016, and I decided to catalog that journey, what I was doing for training for an entire year on social media, and then actually logging some of the playbook or workouts into a kind of a playbook style journal. And at the end of the year, I published that into a book that a few different of my followers have purchased. And with their support and different feedback, I went on to publish a second one in 2017. Over 100 some workouts that you can do anywhere with minimal equipment, and kind of tracking my journey through obstacle course racing specifically.
Very cool. And what is it about obstacle course racing that you've found yourself drawn to? Is it the mental aspect, physical?
Well, when I first started doing running instead of just like a sport like soccer, when you're playing soccer, you're dribbling the ball and doing different things, so you don't realize how much running you're actually doing. So when you go into the sport of specifically running, you realize, oh, all I'm doing is running. This is kind of monotonous, the same thing over and over and over again for however long of a distance you're doing. And so when I first started running, I'd do 5 milers, 5Ks. I think the longest one I had done was 15K, and then I got into obstacle course racing and realized, okay, A, I liked the trails better than the roads, a little less damage on the body, and B, all the obstacles broke up the running. So while I might not necessarily be the fastest person on the planet, I'm not going to drop a 4:30 mile or anything like that. When you throw obstacles into the mix, it slows down the speedy runners who are 125 pounds and can't necessarily complete an obstacle as fast or without as much energy expenditure. Mm-hmm. And so over the course of the race, my obstacle skills balance out their running speed, And then in the last half mile, it becomes a race.
Cool. So it's kind of like you have to find that efficient balance between being a good runner and but also being strong and having to get through the obstacles.
Yeah, some people become too bulky and then they're too slow, and other people focus on speed and then they do a certain obstacle that completely gasses them or takes too long in the race and then they can't catch up.
Yeah. So what is your training kind of look like for that? Is it mostly running and a little bit of like strength training?
Yeah, a little bit of strength training. I try to stay away from the Olympic weight type sets and focus more on full body functional fitness using things like sandbags and different stuff. So you take and you run a mile and then you finish your mile loop or whatever, wherever you've got it set up, and you take the sandbag and you do some bent over rows or some overhead presses or sandbag burpees or whatever it is. It breaks up the running, causes you to feel a little, gassed in the cardiovascular sense, and then it taxes the muscles too. And if you combine different sequences of those types of obstacles together, you can simulate a race quite well, in the sense that, at a Spartan, they might put the bucket carry right before the Hercules hoist. So in this obstacle, you have to take a rope and hoist a sandbag 30 feet into the air and then lower it back to the ground without dropping it. But if your forearms are super tired from carrying the bucket, it makes it a lot harder to do the obstacle. So you can kind of piece together different sequences of obstacles to simulate races as best as possible.
That's awesome. That's cool. So I guess first training, can you create some of these obstacles? Do you know what you're going to get into ahead of time, or is it kind of a figure it out as you go?
Each year Spartan comes up with a few new obstacles, but for the most part, you can kind of get a grasp on what they've got. You're not necessarily going to know the sequence or order of the obstacles or where on the course you're going to see them. But at this point, you're looking at a core set of obstacles that they've had for a few years now, plus the newer ones, and the fact that they've returned to a lot of the venues, for up to 5-year contracts. So depending on where you're racing or different Strava accounts of people you can follow, other people like myself who have Instagrams, and you can see what races I've done and what I did to train for them. And then there's other gyms that are, building overwalls, or they'll throw a pulley up on their ceiling and have a sandbag attached to a rope so that you can practice their Herculean hoist. There's other gyms that even have, like, Spartan's signature obstacle is a spear throw. Mm-hmm. So they have a hay bale and, out back their facility or whatever, and a spear at some of these gyms that you can train for the race.
Yeah. I've seen your Instagrams. Some of them is almost like a Ninja Warrior kind of gym. Is that somewhere you go to regularly?
Yeah, so it's on the other side of the river in Milwaukee. And at the end of 2017, when my wife and I moved to Portland, Oregon, we were looking for a way to train the obstacle side of things, and we found the gym. I decided to become personal trainer certified and started working there on Saturdays, leading kind of like a boot camp class in the mornings. And through a few years of being a structural civil engineer, I decided sitting behind a desk wasn't really a job for me. Totally. So I left that job permanently and was exclusively working at the gym until coronavirus started about 2 months ago. But I've built several of the obstacles that are in the gym and trained a few clients there and walked different everyday people through the facility who want to kind of be like American Ninja Warrior, as you would see on TV.
Very cool. So how has your training changed in any way since coronavirus, or has it been pretty similar?
I definitely am lacking in the ninja upper body grip style obstacles, but I have a set in the hallway behind me. From our bedroom door to our bathroom door is about a 5-foot hallway. Mm-hmm. And I ran some 2x4s when we first moved here across and just put a couple of different grips up there. So I can still get a little bit of practice, but it's definitely not, 10-foot laches or anything like that you would see at the gym.
Yep. Well, hopefully you'll be able to get back in there soon. I know we're all wanting to get back in the gym. I know I'm definitely missing it.
Some sense of normalcy to return.
Yeah, hopefully. It's looking pretty positive right now. But so how is nutrition kind of played into your training? Do you follow any specific diet or anything regarding nutrition?
So some of the times I like to brag that I'm on the seafood diet, and if I see food, I eat it.
Okay.
But when I'm more in a stricter training sense, typically that would start in about February. Off season would be done, and I'd go back into training mode for the season. It's kind of not quite happened yet, but typically yeah. Right now I'm running all the miles and eating all the food. So
I like to think we're all doing that too.
But typically it'd go into more of oatmeal every day for breakfast, try to eat something healthy for lunch, and then same thing for dinner, chicken, turkey, tacos, different things, lots of vegetables, get a good balance, and then make sure I'm taking in good amount of protein, all the different things that you need for recovery with the amount of exercise that I'd be doing to train for specifically races. And then the longer and harder races that I'm trying to train for, the more strict I become on that diet. So like when I'm doing an ultra, I'll get really, really focused on the nutrition and figuring out what I'm going to do on race day. And I think at this point in the number of years that I've raced, I think I had it dialed in fairly well. But every once in a while, I do something stupid and don't take in enough nutrition while the race is going on, and I bonk a little, and I'm like, oh yeah, I should eat something. But
so is that something you can tell, like right in the middle of the race, like you didn't prepare, you didn't fuel yourself correctly? What kind of goes through your mind during that, or like how do you try to adapt?
Yeah, so if it's like a 3-mile race or whatever, then it's not going to be much of a deal. You could hit the water station if you need to, pass it by if you're feeling good. But when you're talking about those ultras, if you're on lap 2 and you didn't feel properly starting an hour into the race, then you're going to be feeling it 25 miles into the race. You're definitely going to slow down.
Yeah. Is there anything specific that you like to eat before, or any like certain amount of carbs or like a strict protein?
I still, if it's a race close to home, I still try to get in that oatmeal that I eat every day just because it's routine and regular to my body. Mm-hmm. If it's somewhere out traveling, we'll buy like bagels with cream cheese or peanut butter, and I'll try to get a little bit of carb and that healthy fats and different things.
Nice. And what are you doing for recovery, as far as nutrition and or like body work?
So most of the time it's a protein shake with almond milk. I like the chocolate powder. As far as working on the muscles and different things, I try to roll out every once in a while, do some stretching. My favorite is animal-based movements. I like to call it primal mobility, but basically you're just using different things like an 8 position or a bear pose, and you're kind of flowing through the transitions from downward dog to child and all the different movements with as much flow as you can to keep the mobility side of things. Mm-hmm. And by slowing it down, you actually get a decent workout on top of the fact that you're doing recovery instead of doing hardcore push-ups or something.
Yeah. And have you always had this mindset around nutrition and recovery, or is it something you kind of had to learn as you got more into the racing?
Well, when I was a kid growing up in the 90s, early 2000s, drinking 2 liters of Mountain Dew and eating an entire case of homemade
Oh yeah.
pie, Oreos by the sleeve, or an entire bag of salt and vinegar chips, I definitely didn't know what nutrition was. I didn't have anyone in my life who told me any different or said, hey, you're going to regret that later. So it's definitely been a learning process. I wasn't the healthiest person on the planet, but I'd like to thank my metabolism for helping me outrun it.
Well, you're lucky. We're not all that lucky to have a quick metabolism. But have you been able to tell kind of a difference in your body and maybe like that switch, like yeah, this food I know it makes me feel better and fuels me better, and I know I can perform better?
Yeah, to be completely honest, I think the time that Fontaine and my wife Fontaine, tried a year of a vegetarian lifestyle, I actually feel like I was in a pretty optimal place. I'm not sure if it was due to the lack of meat or the smaller portion sizes. Maybe I wasn't gouging myself as much. Wasn't on
maybe
the
a little more vegetables in there.
Yeah, a little more vegetables.
Very nice. So maybe we can switch over to kind of the mental aspect. I heard that you ran 50 miles the other day. Just, was that on a whim or had you planned for that?
It was about 2 weeks notice.
Okay.
So about 2 weeks ago from last weekend, a group of friends and I went out into what is known as Forest Park in Northwest Portland. The park itself is about 7 miles, and then it carries over into the other side of a road called Washington Park. But there's a trail that goes from one end to the other, zigzagging its way through, that's about 30 miles long, called Wildwood Trail. And there's several trail runners in the area who've done through runs on the trail. And since we moved here, we've wanted to do it, but have never had a chance, because taking the time commitment to just do a 30-mile training run for fun in the middle of a season when you're training for other specific race goals doesn't necessarily line up. And so with coronavirus, as soon as it happened, we were like, okay, let's start building up our mileage each weekend, 12, 15, 18, 20-mile runs, so that we could go and do the 30-mile Wildwood Trail. And so we went and did that from the start to the finish. It was good. It was lots of fun. We were all very, very sore at the end of it, but you have to park one car on one side and another car on the other, and kind of run from one car to the other and then drive back and pick up your car. Okay. And there's other trails that run up and down, intersecting with Wildwood, and other trails that run, not quite parallel, but in the same general direction as Wildwood. So we thought, what if you did all of Wildwood and then used a portion of Wildwood to get back on another trail that could connect you to one of the other trails that runs in the same direction for most of the park, and then use another connector trail to get back on Wildwood and run Wildwood for the last couple of miles. And you'd get back to your car and you wouldn't need to have another person leave a car or run with somebody else. You could do it. And another factor to the timing of when I did it was that there were a few friends who weren't able to do it the weekend we did the 30 miles. Mm-hmm. So they were doing the 30 miles on this past weekend. And I was like, well, if I'm looking for somebody to run with, so it's not quite boring for 54 straight miles, yep, now's the time to do it. I just did 30, up my mileage a little more, just put one foot in front of the other. And so we parked our cars. They left, one at the start, one at the end, and I ran with them for the 30. And then I said, bye, I'm going to keep going. And I turned back the other way and ran all the way back to my car.
Wow. What I guess not all people can just run 50 miles. I mean, probably takes what, like 13 hours or something?
It took 11 hours and 20 minutes.
Okay.
In previous times, I've actually walked a marathon in 12 hours.
Oh, wow.
On a trail. I was trying to through hike an 80-mile trail, and the goal was to do 3 days, 3 marathons.
Wow.
And wasn't quite packed the right amount of gear or the right supplies for that. So I had to bail halfway through. But I am planning to attempt that one again. 3 days, three marathons. But it shows that if you put one foot in front of the other and keep going, you could probably walk at least a 50K in one day.
Just keep going.
Everybody on the planet could at least do a 50K in one day.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, for me personally, I feel like there's always gets to a point where like it's not physical, it's totally mental. It's you just
100%.
keep going. So how do you, is there something that motivates you to do this? Do you ever get that like runner's high where you just keep going? Like 50 miles is a long time. I'm sure you go through a lot of ups and downs. So what do you think about during that time?
The first 30 miles felt easy because I had just done the exact same trail 30 miles 2 weeks before. Mm-hmm. To say easy, relative. It was when they left and I had to turn back around and know that, they had just run 30 miles, but I was only halfway through. Yeah. So like the entire time they're like, hey, we're 20 miles in, we got 10 miles left. And I'm like, hey, we're 20 miles in, I still have a 50K to do. So it was definitely a high the entire time I was with them. I'd already done that trail. I knew it. I knew I could make it that far. It was definitely the return trip where things became the mental struggle of, okay, everything hurts, take some ibuprofen, keep putting one foot in front of the other, remember to keep drinking my fluids, keep eating my fuel. And it really became at about mile 40, 1 foot in front of the other. And then about mile 49, it became, I was actually coming off the connector trail back onto Wildwood. So again, I knew where I was. I had 5 miles left in my car. I knew I could make it. And that's really the key piece, is when you get to the point where you know you're going to make it, mm-hmm. all the pain goes away, and my pace probably went from 14 minutes down to 10 or 11 just because I was so excited to get back to my car. Yeah. I was tired of running, ready for a break.
The end was near.
You could feel it. Yeah.
And is that kind of go to the same with obstacle course racing? Because I know they're probably much shorter, a little more fast, kind of like quick movements. So how is looking at those mentally different than 50K or something?
Yeah, so let's take the Spartan sprint for an example. It's a 5K race, and if you're in a flat course like Miami, the fastest people are doing it in about 20 minutes. If you're on a more mountainous course, it could take maybe 35 to 40 minutes. Your open heat racers are doing more like an hour and a half, and then some people who are doing their first race and they've never done a Spartan or never trained or are heavier set or whatever, but they're at least out there doing it, are taking 3, 4, 5 hours to complete the race because of the obstacles, because of the elevation, the different factors they experience. There's points where they sit down and roll their muscles out with a rock for 20 minutes just to get back up and keep going. But when you're doing that type of a race, you're pushing as fast as you can go, trying to catch that person or keep that person behind you from catching you. And for me, I always finish races strong. So I always like to start out, try not to get caught up in the starting line sprint that everybody always does because they're excited. Just kind of settle into a pace. And then once those people who sprint the starting line but can't maintain that pace start to settle in, or we start hitting 1, 2, 3 obstacles in a row, my strengths start to show in the obstacle side of things, and I start catching up and picking off people. It's like the next game, okay, there's that person, hunt him down. There's that person, hunt him down. And I'm known for finishing strong, so when you get into the last mile of the race, which, I mean, it's not a long race at 3.1 miles to begin with, but when you get within that last mile, everything sinks in. You start coming back toward the festival area. You can hear the music again. People start cheering because they're all scattered at the obstacles, and the atmosphere picks up, and you just go. Everything you've got left. Cross the finish line, fall over.
Puke everywhere, and everything else goes away.
Yeah, you're done. You finished the race.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think something to be said about that is knowing what your strengths are, and like you said, for the people who go out too hot, it's hard sometimes. I think I find myself doing this. It's hard to not want to try to just catch up with them and go, but you know that in the end you'll be able to finish stronger than them because they went out too hot. I think it's a good thing to know your strengths. So have you always been kind of this motivated? I'm sure you probably grew up in a very competitive environment with siblings, but do you have any motivation that pushes you through every race?
So I'd say my biggest competitive drive and motivation growing up was soccer. I played for about 18 years straight, starting at the age of 3. And it was winter indoor, summer club team, and fall season. Like, I wasn't not playing soccer at any point for those first 18 years. And when you transition into the running, the nutrition, and the training aspect of things, I wish growing up that I had had a mentor or somebody who took the time to say, hey, you need to be doing more on the training side of things, or you need to be eating better, fueling better, so that you can perform better. Because when I transitioned into obstacle course racing, as I learned all that stuff with my brothers or on my own, I'm like, man, I'm so far behind than all the kids who are starting out now. We're so much more educated on what proper nutrition looks like in 2020. And things like Spartan race have the Spartan kids race. I think you can start as young as like 5 or 6 years old.
Oh, wow.
Just imagine the parent is a 40-year-old who's dominating their age group at a Spartan race, and their 7-year-old kid is dominating the kids race. Imagine when that kid turns 18, 19, 21, and they're at the point where I started, which I know a lot of people who are in their 30s, 40s who say the same thing about me. They wish they had started when they were my age. But, you can only start where you start, and every year I continue to learn and improve and grow.
Yeah, and that's all you can ask. Yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely improvements and things we can learn, but kids nowadays have more access to nutrition. I think we've all just learned more about nutrition and know how we should be fueling. Because I'm sure when you were a kid too, it was Pop-Tarts and chips, and no one told you any differently because you didn't think it really mattered, and you could still run around with your friends. But as you get older,
it's what your parents bought too, because it was cheap.
Yeah, exactly. But as you get older, like, you can really tell the effects that those kind of foods have on your body. So it's really, really important to know. And that's awesome that they do kids races. I didn't know that, actually.
What now?
I said that's awesome that they do the kids races. I didn't know they did that.
Yep. Most of the companies have, the age range varies, but they have different levels of kids races. Spartan being the biggest brand, they had the most competitive kids race, but they actually had a kids world championship for like the 10 to 12 year olds, or 10 to 14 or something.
Oh, wow.
But I wanted to say that as far as the motivation piece and stuff, there's definitely moments where, things slip and I go into a eating coma of feeling like a kid again. But all in all, it's about finding balance, I guess. There are times when you can do that, and then there's times when you need to stay dialed in and focused if you want to achieve your, for me, race goals. But whatever your goal is, you have to buckle down and stay focused, right?
Yeah, totally. If there was like one thing you would have known, either nutrition or mentally, before you started, is there one thing you wish you knew going into it that would have maybe helped you a little bit more?
Probably just the all in all aspect of how the food works with your body. Because to also say that something is necessarily good and healthy doesn't necessarily mean that your body processes it the same way that other people do.
Totally.
So there was actually one of the ultras I was doing where I had a buddy create a custom meal plan for me, and the 3 subsistence carb-based options were rice, sweet potato, or wheat pasta. And I learned through that experiment with him that sweet potatoes don't necessarily sit as well with my stomach as I would want them to. Well, they're the most delicious thing on the planet, and if I go to a brewery, I'm getting sweet potato fries.
Totally would agree.
If I'm trying to stay dialed into keeping my body happy and healthy and focused for the race, I'm not going to eat sweet potatoes. Pasta, while it was good, it didn't have enough substance. I would have had to have eaten an entire case of pasta every meal in order for that to hold me over until the next meal. My body just burned through it. It was just empty carbs. So for the entire duration of that meal plan, it started with the rice, and then I tried the sweet potato for 2-3 days, didn't work. Tried the pasta for 2-3 days, didn't work. So for the entire duration of that segment, I was eating rice. And while it seems crazy and like a lot of rice, it's what my body was handling the best for my carb source.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, that's something at Me Bioscience is that we're really looking forward to do is hopefully in the future be able to take your genes and take all your diagnostics and be able to create a supplement that's meant for your body. Because again, I may process pasta differently than you, and you know everyone's body is different. That's why different diets may not work for some people. Some people can do keto and some people can't, and some people can do meat and others can't. So that's why I'm really excited to see where we move forward in that. I know you got to try some samples of our products. Did you like them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was talking with CEO Aaron.
Yeah.
And he was saying that the 5 pre and 5 posts every week for a month, so like during the weekdays for a month, was about $130. And I think that's a great deal. Take the pre every day before your workout, take the post every day after your workout. And the more regular you are with it, the better it's going to be for you. If you just have one here and there, you know, it's going to do what it's going to do, but your body isn't as adapted to how to process it.
Totally. You won't reap all the benefits that someone else would take if you do it consistently.
Absolutely. And so when you transition into the specially engineered for a person, I'm excited for that because that's a game changer.
Totally. Me too. And I mean, no one else is really doing it. And I mean, we have a little bit of ways to go, but I think once it gets there, it's really going to be exciting to see how people can perform better because they're fueling for their own body, not for anyone else's.
Right. I mean, it really is about what works for you. I mean, so while so many people are focused on the healthy aspect of what you need to take in, there's actually a ultra runner who her diet doesn't necessarily look the greatest. I would say she runs all the miles and eats all the food and enjoys it, and she's happy with that.
Yeah.
And that's the balance she has found. And because she trains and eats like that when she trains, she races and she eats like that when she races. Because if you're changing up what you do to your body on race day, your body is like, what the heck? We haven't trained this way. Why are you doing this now? So it's about being consistent with yourself. And, you know, her diet might not look necessarily like mine or yours or somebody on keto or something, but she's actually one of the top 100-mile runners in the world.
Yeah. About consistency. Your body's going to, if you're changing it, your body's going to go, what are you doing? Like, I don't know how to process this fuel. Like, I can't give you as much energy as you've given me before, you know?
Right. So when you take that specifically engineered Me Biosciences and you get somebody who's on it on a consistent routine, taking in the best products for their body every day, and you put them out on that race course having trained for X number of months for that race or whatever, you know, they're trying to do, it's going to be the next level.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We'll see some crazy things happen, I think. broken mile times, some crazy, I mean, we got below 2-hour marathon. Who knows what'll be next? But
Somebody's got to actually break that in a race.
Yeah, totally. Be crazy. So I guess we can wrap up here, but we do have one question that we ask everyone at the end, and that's given all the hurdles to proper nutrition, if you could wake up tomorrow with like one product or service or even like a piece of knowledge, what's one thing that would help you as an athlete, or just to perform at your best?
I mean, honestly, I think we just touched on it. Something that's specifically engineered for your body every day, pre and post workout. Can't beat it.
Totally agree. Well, thanks for joining me today. Sorry I couldn't be in person or anything, but you know, gotta do what you gotta do. And I guess I'll be seeing you in social media.
Thanks for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too. Be safe.